My wife, Clara, had always been haunted by someone from her past. The man she couldn't forget. We had been married for 4 years when she decided to bring a young man into our circle. Someone who, as it turned out, looked exactly like him. As with many things in our marriage, I was the very last person to understand what was happening. The situation came to a head at a large banquet. By pure coincidence, this young man and I showed up wearing the exact same red suit. Clara's eyes immediately found me, and she frowned with clear disapproval. "Red doesn't suit you," she said flatly. "Go change." I stood there for a moment, looking at my new suit. I didn't change it. Instead, I made the decision right then to change the wife who didn't want me in it. The moment he saw me in the same outfit, the young man at Clara's side, Julian, pouted with obvious displeasure. She quickly turned and whispered something in his ear, and he obediently turned and walked away. A moment later, Clara navigated through the crowded, glamorous room and stopped directly in front of me, in front of our whole table. She looked at me, her brow furrowed slightly with irritation. "Red doesn't suit you," she repeated. "Go change." As soon as she said it, all conversation at our table stopped. Everyone went silent, but I could feel them sneaking glances at me, waiting to see what I would do. Just as the air felt like it was about to freeze, someone at the table snickered. "Hilarious," a man's voice said. "A cheap imitation." I slowly lifted my eyes to see who had spoken. It was Clara's cousin. I also knew he had been the best friend of her lost love, Daniel, the one who had died years ago. No one had ever told me about him, not when we were engaged, and not when we got married. No one thought to mention that Clara carried this ghost in her heart. I didn't find out the truth until she was pregnant with our son, Sam, almost ready to give birth. Now, in our 4th year of marriage, she had taken in a boy who looked just like Daniel, and once again, I was the last person in the world to know. When I just sat there, not moving or saying anything back to her, Clara's expression darkened with impatience. Her voice rose just enough to cut through the quiet. "Alex?" My gaze traveled past the other people at the table and landed on her face. Perhaps it was some kind of private romantic gesture between them, but she was wearing a dark red silk scarf, something very unusual for her. I found myself staring at that splash of crimson on her chest. Suddenly, the world around me went completely silent. Just before she could speak again, clearly annoyed, I stood up from the table. I pushed my chair back and simply walked out of the main dining hall. Clara's expression softened just a little bit, thinking she had won. "Change your clothes and come right back," she called after me. I pressed my lips together and even managed a faint smile in her direction. But I didn't say a single word. I didn't go to the dressing room to change out of my new suit, and I had no intention of going back to the banquet hall. I just turned, walked to an empty side door, and left the building entirely. The weather had been gloomy when I first arrived, and now a fine, steady rain was falling outside. It was late spring, so the rainy night wasn't particularly cold. I didn't even bother trying to find an umbrella. I just walked straight out into the rain. When I eventually got back to the Dalton estate, our housekeeper greeted me, looking quite cheerful. "Sir," she said, "Mrs. Dalton brought the young master over. They're both waiting for you." My heart gave an unsteady leap, and I quickened my pace walking into the house. Clara gave birth to Sam in our 1st year of marriage, but her mother, Mrs. Dalton, had insisted that the birth took a serious toll on Clara's health. She also made it clear that she thought I was a clumsy man who wouldn't have the energy or knowledge to care for a child. The day Sam turned 1 month old, Mrs. Dalton came to the house and took him away herself. I was so devastated I nearly collapsed. I didn't even have the strength to chase after her. All I could do was beg Clara through my sobs, but in the end, all I was given was 1 day a week to see my own son. I cherished that 1 day, but time flew by, and Sam grew up. With every visit, he seemed to grow more and more distant from me. As I walked up the steps, I could hear the house filled with laughter. Inside, Sam was expertly maneuvering a remote control car across the floor. Mrs. Dalton, the housekeeper, and the nanny were all gathered around him, clapping and cheering him on. I couldn't help but step forward, my eyes fixed on that small figure. Sam glanced up at me for just a second, then immediately went back to playing with his car. I waited patiently for him to finish, then knelt down to hug him. But he just turned and ran straight to Mrs. Dalton. "Grandma," he said, "I saw Daddy. I want to go home, home." He hugged her leg, nuzzling affectionately against her. Mrs. Dalton was all smiles as she scooped him up into her arms. "Grandma's little darling, let's go home right now." My hands were still stretched out foolishly in front of me, but all they held was a handful of cold air. I always seemed to be so slow on the uptake. It was just like when Clara had humiliated me in public earlier that evening. The real sadness and weight of it only started to sink in on the way home. It wasn't until long after Mrs. Dalton had left with Sam that I finally crouched on the floor of the empty house and began to cry silently. It felt like there was nothing and no one left for me here. Late that night, I went upstairs and packed a few things. All my documents and some personal items had to go. I didn't touch anything else in the room. As I crossed the courtyard to leave, I saw the grove of apple trees through the misty rain. I had planted those flowers myself the year Clara and I were married. I loved them. But I only paused for 2 minutes. Then I walked away without a single backward glance. Clara was a little tipsy. She glanced at her watch. It had been almost an hour since Alex left the table. It was just a simple suit change, and the dressing room was right upstairs. It really shouldn't have taken this long. She frowned and pulled out her phone to text him. "Why aren't you back yet?" But the message went unanswered. Just then, Clara's assistant approached the table. She bent down and whispered respectfully, "The driver said that Sir already went home." Clara's face slowly turned to ice. This was the first time Alex had ever thrown a tantrum, and she had always hated it when men acted like that. "Get Julian over here," she ordered. The assistant's heart skipped a beat, but she nodded. "Yes, right away." When Julian returned, he had changed his clothes, and his hair was slightly disheveled. He had clearly just been crying. His eyes were still red, and his makeup was completely gone. It gave him a clean, fragile, boyish look. Seeing him like this, Clara was visibly lost in thought. "Ms. Dalton," Julian began, "did I do something wrong tonight?" He bit his lip and looked up at her. He had 2 tiny beauty marks at the corner of his left eye, which were even more distinct without makeup. And that was the feature that most resembled her lost love, Daniel. Clara reached out and cupped Julian's face. She leaned down and kissed the small marks, murmuring something in a drunken haze. It was 3 days later when Clara learned that Alex had left their marital home that night and never returned. She wasn't too concerned. Alex was the youngest son of the Mason family, but he wasn't like the other Mason sons. He'd gotten lost as a child and had supposedly suffered a great deal. He still had old scars on his body. He was already 20 when the Masons found him. He had never even been to college. His personality was already set, quiet, withdrawn, and timid. Because of this, the Masons didn't like him, and Mrs. Dalton didn't like him either. So, when they got married, Mrs. Dalton laid down a condition. They could have a wedding, but they could only get legally married after Clara gave birth to a son. Later, Clara had Sam, but Mrs. Dalton never mentioned making the marriage official. Alex, being as meek as he was, never dared to bring it up. By the time she returned to their house, it had been a full week since Alex had left. It was late April. As she got out of the car, she immediately saw the grove of apple trees, their blossoms starting to wither. The housekeeper, seeing her displeasure, quickly explained, "Sir always took care of these himself and never let us touch them." "He's still not back?" Clara walked forward slowly, her brow furrowing even deeper. The housekeeper shook her head and whispered, "Sir hasn't been back at all." "What day is it?" Clara asked suddenly. "It's Saturday. Did he go pick up Sam?" Every Saturday, without fail, was the day Alex and Sam met. "He was picked up. He should be here any minute," the housekeeper replied. Clara nodded, her expression returning to its usual cool indifference. "Go tell Alex that if he's not back in an hour, we're sending Sam back to the main house." Sam was sitting on the living room carpet, unwrapping a new toy. The housekeeper walked in and spoke cautiously. "Ma'am, we called Sir." Clara grunted in acknowledgement, her eyes on Sam's small face. He looked a lot like Alex, especially his eyes, double eyelids with long, thick lashes. He had Alex's fair skin, too, a truly adorable little boy. But the housekeeper remained standing there. After a moment, she added, "Sir said he's not coming back." Clara's head snapped up. The housekeeper froze in terror. Even Sam seemed to sense that something was wrong and put down his toy. After a long moment, Clara let out a cold laugh. Then she stood up and called to her son. "Sam, Mommy's taking you home." Sam stood up, but asked, "Aren't we waiting for Daddy?" "We're not waiting." Clara bent down and picked him up. "Is Daddy not coming back?" Sam sounded a little happy, but strangely, not too happy. Clara carried Sam out of the living room and down the steps. As they passed through the half-withered apple garden, Clara finally spoke. "That's right. Daddy isn't listening, so he's not allowed home for a while. This is his punishment." This felt like the most relaxed and free I'd been in years. From the time I returned to the Masons to my marriage with Clara, I hadn't had a moment's peace. Now, I didn't have to get up at 6:30 a.m. on the dot. I didn't have to eat a Western-style breakfast every day just to suit Clara's tastes. I didn't have to spend every week anxiously waiting for Saturday, only to end up heartbroken and sleepless that night. And I didn't have to wonder when Clara would be home tonight, or if she would come home at all. I could sleep until 10. Then I'd get up slowly and make myself a super spicy bowl of ramen. I could also binge-watch dramas until 3 in the morning, crying through a whole box of tissues. Even when Sam's kindergarten teacher called to invite me to a parent-child event, I still felt a pang of sadness, but I was able to tell her calmly, "I no longer have any connection to the Dalton family. Please don't contact me about Sam Dalton's affairs anymore. Thank you." After hanging up, I looked at the call log. The Dalton housekeeper had called like clockwork every Saturday. I frowned slightly. Tomorrow is Saturday again. At 9:00 a.m., instead of waiting for the housekeeper to call, I called them myself. "Sir? Ma'am, it's Sir on the phone." The housekeeper's voice was excited and happy. Clara felt a slight tremor in her chest, but when she spoke, her voice was still cold. "Tell him Sam isn't coming over today." The housekeeper paused for a second, but did as she was told. A moment later, she returned. "Sir is asking if it's convenient for you to talk." Clara set down the newspaper she was reading. She looked down slowly and deliberately folded the cuffs of her shirt. Only then did she hold out her hand. "Give it to me." When she took the phone, she heard the faint sound of his breathing. It was so far away, yet so close, like it was gently tickling her heart. She saw the large patch of apple blossoms outside the French doors. Suddenly, she remembered a day when he had been running toward her with a bouquet of flowers and had almost crashed into her. That was after they were married, a rare glimpse of his playful side. Clara thought to herself, since he's the one backing down, I'll give him an out. "Alex, have you learned your lesson?" The breathing on the other end seemed to stop for a second. Then his soft, gentle voice came through. "Clara, we never legally registered our marriage 4 years ago." "I know." She curled her lip dismissively. So after all this drama, what he wanted was to make their marriage official. It was bound to happen sooner or later anyway. To her, it was just a formality. "So," he continued, "if we separate now, we don't have to go through a messy divorce." The smile on Clara's lips vanished instantly. "What did you say?" Her fingers tightened around the phone. "Don't have the housekeeper call me on Saturdays anymore. I'm not coming back. I've also made things very clear with Sam's teacher at the kindergarten." "Alex, what are you trying to say?" "Clara, I won't take any of your assets, but the 1.2 million and all the gold you gave me when we married, I won't be returning those either. Consider it compensation for the last 4 years." Clara had lived for nearly 30 years and had never felt such rage. But at the peak of her anger, her voice became surprisingly gentle. "Have you thought this through?" "I have." There was not a hint of hesitation in his voice. Clara hung up. The housekeeper stood at a distance, not daring to breathe. Just a moment ago, Ms. Dalton had looked like she was smiling, and they had all breathed a sigh of relief. The atmosphere in the house had been growing stranger and more oppressive by the day. But now, after Clara ended the call, her face was terrifyingly cold. "Take the phone." Clara stood up and called the housekeeper over. She took 2 steps toward the door and saw the patch of apple trees. She felt even more suffocated. She turned and ordered the housekeeper, "Redo the master bedroom upstairs. Clear out all of Alex's things. I don't want to see them." The housekeeper was stunned for a moment, but quickly nodded in agreement. Clara strode out of the house. Her phone vibrated. A call was coming in. She glanced at the screen. It was Julian. But she had no interest in answering. A fake was a fake. Julian couldn't compare to Daniel. He couldn't even compare to Alex. That night, she really shouldn't have embarrassed Alex. He was angry and hurt, and he didn't want to come back. If he wanted to throw a fit, let him. With his personality, once he got knocked around a bit and saw how tough it was out there, he'd come running back home. But it was as if Alex had simply vanished. After that phone call, there was no more news from him. Once, Sam wasn't feeling well, and Mrs. Dalton brought him over, hoping Alex could give him a therapeutic massage. Sam had been frail since birth, and Alex had taught himself a lot about pediatric care. But when the housekeeper called his number, it was disconnected. Mrs. Dalton was furious. "I've never seen such a heartless father in my life. If he doesn't come back today, then he can stay away forever. The Dalton family will be just fine with or without him." Mrs. Dalton left with Sam in a huff. Clara sat on the sofa for a long time without saying a word. As dusk fell, she told the driver to prepare the car. "We're going to the Masons." The Mason family was quite surprised when the car pulled up. They respectfully invited her in. Seeing Clara's grim expression, Mr. and Mrs. Mason exchanged a look. "Did Alex do something wrong again?" they asked cautiously. The couple wasn't particularly fond of the son they had struggled to find after so many years, especially since his son was almost 4, and he still hadn't gotten that marriage license. The thought alone was humiliating for the Masons. Clara's hand, holding the teacup, paused. He hasn't been back these past few days? Mr. and Mrs. Mason were even more surprised. No. Clara slowly set her cup down. He hadn't gone back to the Masons, and he had nowhere else to go in New York City. Where had Alex been all this time? Did you two have a fight? Mrs. Mason asked, her voice even more careful. Clara was already on her feet. A small disagreement. Then it must be Alex's fault. Mr. Mason's face darkened. I'll call him and give him a piece of my mind. But Clara stopped him. No need. We'll handle it ourselves. All right then. Couples fight, but they always make up. Mr. Mason escorted her out with a smile. As Clara reached her car, she suddenly turned back. You have Alex's birth certificate, right? Mr. Mason was startled at first, then overjoyed. Yes, I have it right here. If you need it, Clara, I'll go get it right now. But Clara shook her head. You hold on to it for now. When I need it in a few days, I'll have Alex come get it himself. Of course. He can come get it any time. Mr. and Mrs. Mason happily saw Clara off. They had long since given up hope of Clara and Alex getting legally married. They were even prepared for Alex to be kicked out and for Clara to remarry. But now, it seemed there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Clara was clearly thinking about making things official with Alex. For the Mason family, this was the best news they could imagine. Now no one would dare laugh at them for only being halfway in-laws with the Daltons. After staying for half a month in the town where I lived as a child, I traveled to many other places I'd always wanted to. See, I've always been frugal anyway. With this much money, I could live comfortably on my own for the rest of my life. I decided that if I found a town I liked during my travels, I'd buy a small one-bedroom apartment and settle down. As a child, I had been sold, adopted, and had lived in an orphanage. More than anything, I longed for a home that was truly my own. The Mason family, my birth parents, was not my home. Clara's house wasn't my home either. After all, a 4-year de facto marriage with no legal foundation was just a castle in the air. Now that I had left, the only thing I couldn't let go of, aside from the flowers I had planted with my own hands, was Sam. But I also knew very well that the best place for Sam was with the Dalton family. I'm different from other people. I've been accustomed to separation since I was a child. So, while I was sad to leave, I didn't dwell on the pain for too long. Besides, with me gone, everyone was happy. Clara could marry someone she actually liked. In the end, I returned to the small county where I had lived for a few years as a child. The housing prices in that town, called Havenwood, were very low. I had originally planned to buy a small apartment, but I ended up buying a small house with a yard. The people there were incredibly kind and simple. The most peaceful and happiest time of my life was spent there. It was just a shame that the old couple who had taken me in for a few years had already passed away. While handling the property transfer, however, I ran into the older girl who used to play with me when I was little. When she saw me, Chloe was thrilled. AJ, is that you? When I was adopted, my name was changed to AJ Lee. I was just as surprised to see Chloe. I never would have imagined that the little house I bought was her family's home. Chloe, long time no see. I looked at her, and all the warm memories from long ago came rushing back like a tidal wave. I couldn't stop my eyes from turning red. Aren't you married? Chloe wanted to wipe my tears like she did when we were kids, but she raised her hand and then stopped. Where are your wife and child? Aren't they with you? How have you been all these years? I heard your birth parents found you. Are they good to you?" I just shook my head. I couldn't speak. All I wanted was to have a good, long cry. That's how people are. You only dare to cry so freely in front of the people you know love you the most. Chloe and I hadn't seen each other in years, but seeing her, I became the little A.J. Lee from our childhood again, and she became the big sister who always protected and comforted me. They weren't good to you, were they? Chloe's eyes were a little red. I guess not. If they were, you wouldn't have come all the way out here to buy a house by yourself. This place is hundreds of miles from New York City. AJ, how much have you been hurt? Chloe. I tugged on her sleeve, my eyes swollen from crying, but a smile touched my lips. I saw the neighbors drying a lot of herbs. Could you make me that noodle soup you used to make when we were little? Chloe looked at me for a long moment. Then, just like when we were kids, she ruffled my hair and smiled. Of course, I'll make it for you. Clara met with Julian one last time. At the banquet that night, Julian had been triumphant, like a flower in full bloom. Now he was noticeably haggard. Don't call me anymore. We shouldn't see each other again. The house and the car would be transferred to his name. Clara looked at him. His long hair fell to his shoulders, and his face was bare, giving him a very pitiful look. He looked so much like Daniel, but for some reason her heart felt nothing. I won't be coming back here. With that, Clara turned to leave. Julian couldn't help but cry out, Ms. Dalton, I don't understand. Everything was fine between us. You said you liked me. I never liked you. But you told me to stay with you forever. I have a husband. But you don't love him, do you? Clara looked down at the wedding ring on her finger. Didn't she love him? If she truly didn't love him at all, there were a million ways to break their engagement. But the first time she saw him at the Mason's house, she had felt a sense of pity for him. It was just that Alex was too timid, too quiet. Most of the time, he was like a shadow, barely there. You could hardly feel his presence. But in the months he'd been gone, Clara felt off. She had tried going out with friends, partying, looking for new distractions. She had even met men who looked more like her lost love than Julian did. But she felt no spark. She rarely even thought about her lost love anymore. Instead, she often found herself thinking of Alex. They had been married for 4 years, but when they were alone, Alex would still be too shy to look at her. When he smiled, he had 2 small dimples at the corners of his mouth. Like Sam, he had very fair skin and was very handsome. Now, thinking back quietly, Clara realized something. In their 4 years of marriage, they had been intimate often, and she had never grown tired of him. In the months he'd been away, she hadn't touched Julian. Just last night she had dreamed of Alex. She'd dreamed of some very intimate scenes. Victoria suddenly told her driver, "Stop at a flower shop on the way." She bought a bouquet of red roses. That evening, she went out again and bought a red suit. Alex actually looked very handsome in red. It made his skin look as white as snow, making him look striking and brilliant. She decided to take a step back, to bring him flowers and a suit, and take him home. And so I settled down. After graduating from college, Chloe started a business with a classmate. Her company was in the city, and her daily life was very busy. But every weekend, she would come back to Havenwood to be with me. The neighbor, a kind auntie, often teased me lovingly. AJ, I think Chloe really likes you. The other day you were watering the flowers in the yard, and she was standing there pouring tea, and she didn't even notice the cup was overflowing. From across the fence, the auntie's face crinkled into a smile. AJ, look. Your big sister Chloe is almost 30, and doesn't have a husband. Why don't you just marry her? You two used to play house all the time as kids, and Chloe was always your bride. My little rascal was so jealous. Chloe was very good to me. Even better than when we were kids. Although I can be slow on the uptake, I had been married once before. How could I not sense those feelings? Auntie, I don't know how to do anything, I smiled. I never went to college, and I don't have any skills. Chloe is so accomplished. Her future husband must be an outstanding man, too. I thought of how Clara never took me to important events, thinking of how the Dalton family never accepted me, thinking of how I wasn't even qualified to raise my own child. If I had grown up with my birth parents, gotten a good education, and become confident and capable, maybe that marriage wouldn't have failed so miserably. A person like me is probably better off living alone. Who says? Chloe's voice suddenly came from outside the fence. The sun was setting, and she was wearing a white dress. She stood tall and graceful, elegant and gentle. The quiet, skinny girl from our childhood had grown up. Now she had gentle but strong shoulders, capable of sheltering the people she cared about from the wind and rain. AJ, you're a wonderful person. Don't sell yourself short. Am I? I looked at Chloe, bewildered. If I'm so wonderful, why don't my family, my wife, and my child like me? Of course. Chloe pushed open the gate and walked into the yard. Everyone has a purpose for being here. If they didn't see it, that's their loss. But I still couldn't believe it. Chloe, as if comforting a child, used the simplest examples to prove her point. You know how to grow flowers. The same flowers always bloom more vibrantly in your hands. You gave Mrs. Huang a massage, and her back doesn't hurt as much anymore. A few days ago, I was working late, and you helped me organize my files, data, and spreadsheets. You made everything so simple and clear. You were a huge help. If you let me, I could list your good qualities for 3 days and 3 nights. Chloe smiled, and the auntie smiled along with her. I could go on for 3 hours myself. It was as if the dark clouds over my heart were simply pushed away. That night, for the first time, I told Chloe about Clara. I also told her about Sam. Chloe was silent for a long time and didn't say anything. Later, she drove back to the city overnight. When I heard her car leave, I felt surprisingly calm. In my short 20-something years of life, I had experienced too many goodbyes. It was as if I had become numb. I finally drifted off to sleep as dawn was breaking, but I was soon awakened by the sound of a car. I got up, feeling groggy. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtains. I saw Chloe getting out of her car. She was holding something in her hand and quickly walked to my door. AJ. Her voice was low, careful not to wake the neighbors. I hurried to open the door. Chloe? Chloe stood there, her eyes still weary from the drive, but they were exceptionally bright. I went back to get my birth certificate. If you're willing, and if you don't mind that I'm a few years older than you, let's go get married today. Get married? Yes, get married. Chloe's voice was incredibly serious. Once we're married, you'll have a home. The word home was perhaps 100 times more alluring to me than to most people. That's why something Clara saw as a mere formality was so incredibly important to me. But a child who has been a guest in others' homes and constantly displaced learns to read people's expressions first. So I never once brought up the topic of getting legally married with her. It's ridiculous, isn't it? A person as humble as me still didn't want to accept a handout. AJ, I was too young back then. I couldn't keep you at home. Later, when I went to college in New York, I asked around for news about you everywhere. And then, when I heard your family had found you, I was so happy for you. Your birth parents are very wealthy, so I thought they would surely cherish their precious son whom they'd found after so long. I was just a poor student back then, so I didn't want to bother you." Chloe's eyes were filled with deep pain and regret. "If I had known they weren't good to you, I would have come and taken you away. My parents talked about you often, too. When Mom was passing, she even called out your name. They don't want you, they don't like you, but I want you. AJ, I wasn't planning on getting married, but then fate brought you back to me." Chloe's voice suddenly choked up. "I don't want to lose you again this time." I didn't know when the tears had started to fall silently down my face. I was kidnapped and sold as a child. My adoptive mother later had her own son and didn't want to keep me anymore. I was often beaten, left in the cold, and forced to do endless chores. It was Chloe's parents who took pity on me and raised me for a few years. Later, my adoptive mother forcibly took me back and sold me to someone else. I was beaten frequently in that home, so I ran away. I went to foster homes and orphanages and was briefly adopted a few times. The days of displacement seemed like they would never end. I had actually thought about coming back to Chloe's family, but I was afraid my adoptive mother would catch me and sell me again, so I never dared to come back. I never knew Chloe had been looking for me. I never knew her mom had been thinking of me when she passed away, and I never imagined that Chloe and I would meet again like this. Perhaps this was true fate, and everything in the past with the Masons and the Daltons was just another trial I had to endure to get here. My eyes were red, but I looked at Chloe and shook my head with a smile. "Chloe, I can't get married to you today." "AJ," I saw the light in Chloe's eyes begin to shatter. It hurt me deeply. I gently took her hand. "My birth certificate is still with the Masons. It'll take a whole day to go get it and come back." I never expected that getting my birth certificate from the Masons would be so easy. I also never expected my parents to be so kind and loving toward me. But while I had once craved all of this, it now felt insignificant. When I left with the document, they smiled and told me, "Bring Clara home for dinner after you two make it official." I knew they had misunderstood, but I didn't explain. Why complicate things? Knowing them, they'd probably have a fit if they knew I was marrying a woman who wasn't worth even 1% of Clara's fortune. After leaving the Masons' house, I took a taxi straight to the airport. On the way there, I got a call from Chloe. "AJ, I can't wait. I just landed in New York. Wait for me. We'll get married right here in the city." I couldn't help but smile. "Okay, I'll wait for you." After hanging up, I quickly told the driver, "Sir, I'm not going to the airport anymore. I need to go to City Hall now. Please hurry." The day after Chloe and I got married, she took me shopping for a lot of things. A watch, cufflinks, clothes, and 2 designer briefcases. I didn't really care for these things, but Chloe said that what other people had, I had to have too. Chloe then took me back to pay respects to her parents. After that, we had a banquet for our relatives back in our hometown. She wanted to have a proper wedding ceremony back in the city. She specifically bought a red suit for me to wear at the banquet. When I tried it on, I walked out into the yard, nervously adjusting the hem. It was a perfect spring day. At dusk, the apple blossoms were still awake. Looking at Chloe, for some reason, I thought of what Clara had said that day. "I don't think red looks very good on me, does it?" Chloe shook her head. This woman, who was always so proper she would even ask for permission before holding my hand, suddenly stood on her toes and kissed me. "My husband is exceptionally handsome." I was stunned for a moment. Then I couldn't help but break into a smile. Just as Chloe was about to end the light, fleeting kiss, I leaned down and slowly closed my eyes. Clara stood outside the simple fence. The red roses in her hand fell to the ground, the petals scattering. She saw the sweet smile on Alex's lips. The two dimples that made his smile even more beautiful now felt like daggers stabbing into her heart. She finally lost control and shoved open the bamboo gate. The loud noise startled both Alex and the woman, who turned around. "Clara?" Alex's face was filled with shock and surprise, but the woman held him protectively, her face full of wariness. Clara didn't even glance at Chloe. She walked up and grabbed Alex's wrist. "Come back, with me." But Alex didn't move. He even struggled to pull his hand away. Victoria turned back, her eyes narrowing. "Alex," she said, her voice dropping. "I'll say it one more time. Come back with me." "Clara, I made it very clear before. I'm not going back." "Didn't you always want to get legally married?" Clara pulled out the family records she had with her. "Alex, if you come back with me now, we can register our marriage tomorrow." "But I'm already married." Clara felt something explode in her ears. "What did you say?" "Clara, I'm already married. Just yesterday, Chloe and I got our marriage license." I looked at her calmly. "I went back to the Masons yesterday to get my documents." Clara seemed to laugh, as if my words had enraged her. "Alex, don't forget we were married for 4 years. Sam is our son." "I haven't forgotten, but I have to correct one thing. You and I never registered our marriage. It has no legal standing. So, Clara, we were never in a legally binding marriage. You should go. From now on, I'll have to trouble you to take good care of Sam." After I finished, I turned away from her. "Chloe, let's go inside. I'm a little tired." I took Chloe's hand, and she immediately squeezed it tightly. "Okay, I'll take you to rest." "Alex." Clara took another step forward and grabbed me again. "Sam misses you." I felt my throat tighten instantly, and in the next moment my eyes turned red. Sam was only a little over 3 years old. He didn't understand anything. Even if he wasn't very close to me, I never resented him. I guess some fathers and sons are just not meant to be close. "Come back with me. I'll have someone bring Sam over, and from now on, the 3 of us can be a family." My heart ached with a desire to cry. The irony was suffocating. So she knew everything. She knew I missed Sam, knew I dreamed of being reunited with my son. But she had just stood by and watched as Mrs. Dalton took Sam away. She had refused to grant me that one wish. And now that I wanted nothing, now that I was leaving, she wanted to bring Sam back. So Sam could have been brought back all along. So some filial duties didn't need to be observed after all. "Clara, I don't need that anymore." I forcefully pulled my hand away again. "I don't need a family of 3. If Sam misses me, he can come visit me. And if you allow it, I will come back to see him regularly." "Alex, Sam is your own son. Aren't you afraid that if I remarry, my new husband will mistreat him?" I'd never seen Clara look like this. Even when she was angry in the past, she was composed. But now her eyes were blazing, and her beautiful face looked almost contorted. When Sam was born, she used him to threaten me. Now that I was leaving, she was using the same tactic. But I was no longer afraid of losing anything. Chloe taught me that I am Alex first, and then a husband or a father. I spent those years in a daze, having completely lost myself. It wasn't entirely other people's fault, that they looked down on me and didn't care about me. So now I had to be myself first. I would do anything to protect Sam, but he is your flesh and blood too. He was raised by Mrs. Dalton since he was a month old. She has doted on him for over 3 years, so I doubt she would let him be mistreated. Besides, if that day ever comes... I took a deep breath. "Clara, I will take you to court for his custody." So you're determined to be with her? I nodded. Yes. All because of a red suit? Clara sneered. Alex, in the 4 years we were together, how much of what I gave you can she ever give you? It's not just about a red suit. I looked up at Chloe. Her eyes held anger and indignation, but even more, they held pain and guilt. Clara, you can like many people, but in my wife's heart and eyes, there is only me. I've already broken things off with Julian, and that ghost from your past. I've long let him go. Alex, no matter what, we were husband and wife for 4 years. I'm not without feelings for you. Clara's brow was deeply furrowed. It was clear she was reluctant to talk about these things. She was reluctant to admit that she now had feelings for me, as if falling for someone like me was a gift from a superior to a subordinate, a gift that couldn't quite be brought into the light. But I no longer hoped for the scraps of affection she might deign to give me. In the deepening twilight, the apple blossoms I had planted with my own hands were still beautiful, even more beautiful than the ones in the Dalton family's garden. Clara said she had let go, and so had I. 4 years had worn away all the love I felt at first sight. Now I was going to live the stable life of an ordinary person. Clara, I used to love you, but now it's all gone. You should go back, and please don't look for me again. You should find a husband whose knowledge and experience can match yours, someone you can be proud of, not someone like me who only knows how to tend to flowers and plants. I'm sorry for wasting 4 years of your life. I stood in the night breeze and looked at Clara one last time. Back then, when she didn't break off our engagement and married me, I was truly grateful. Because at that time, every single second at the Masons' house felt like torture. Clara took me away from the Masons and gave me a temporary home. For me, at that time, it was a kind of salvation. After all, if she had broken the engagement, the Masons might have sold me off like a commodity to any woman. And for someone like me, who had been sold several times as a child, that would have been a nightmare. So even now, I still hope she can live a good life. And I don't wish to become mortal enemies with Sam's mother. If we can part peacefully, then I suppose it's a happy ending for everyone. Clara's perspective. Alex and Chloe's wedding was quite grand. Considering Chloe's financial situation at the time, the budget was very high. But she was willing, and others would, naturally only praise her deep affection. Alex cried at the wedding quite hard. He hadn't even cried that hard when he married me. He said, "My name is Alex Mason, but my life until now has been full of hardship. I am so grateful to my wife." Hearing those words at the time was quite jarring. In the 4 years he was married to me, I thought I hadn't treated him poorly. In my circle, keeping lovers and boy toys was commonplace. Which socialite hasn't had a stable of boy toys? But I only lost my mind, and kept one, Julian, and I got tired of him quickly. Other than that, I was faithful. I don't believe his wife, Chloe, could truly remain devoted to one person. Women, with or without money, will seek pleasure, especially with money. So I secretly helped things along. Chloe's company grew bigger and bigger, and she earned more and more money. Naturally, the temptations would also increase. At that point, a person with Alex's personality would surely not tolerate it. If he and Chloe divorced, and I went to him with Sam, perhaps he would come back to us. But in the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. Chloe never took a single wrong step. He and Chloe had a daughter. She looked exactly like him. I was terribly jealous. Sam grew up and looked more and more like me. Although everyone in the Dalton family is very good-looking, looking like a lonely person like me isn't a good thing. His relationship with Sam, however, got better and better. They are father and son, after all. How could there be some irreconcilable hatred, like in a novel? Sometimes Sam would go stay with him for a few days. Alex would naturally have him look after his little sister. Their sibling relationship was also perfect. Sometimes Alex would come to our house to see Sam. While father and son talked, I would mindlessly tend to the flowers outside. Every time, I wanted to offer him a ride home, but Chloe would always come to pick him up personally. She guarded against me like I was a monster, but this wasn't so bad. With me as a cautionary tale, Chloe wouldn't make the same common mistakes. And so Alex's life, for the rest of his days, would naturally be nothing but sweet.